And welcome to Unofficially, the podcast, Wisconsin Badgers. I'm Evan. I am going solo today. I just wanted to get something out for you guys. I know it's been a little bit since we put a pod up. We had a pod after the Minnesota basketball game, but had some technical difficulties, which resulted in it not being usable. So we'll try to at least get a pod up a week from here on out. And it's really just been too exciting of an off season and basketball season to not pod. So football especially seems like we've got a massive headline news story every day, only to be surpassed by another massive news story the following day. So a few housekeeping issues first. If you like the podcast, please do subscribe. Also, if you have any questions that you'd like to send to us or really just follow us on Twitter as well. So at unofficially_W. Okay, so let's jump right into it. The good and the bad. We'll start with the bad. Wisconsin loses to Illinois in basketball today. I think a lot of this, or I should say, maybe this is wishful thinking, but I'd like to put a lot of this game on the absence of Tyler Wall. As you know, Tyler rolled his ankle in the Minnesota game. He's this team's leading scorer and arguably our best player. Team obviously missed him today. Not only do we miss Tyler, but we lose so much depth, right? When we have Gilmore, right, starting, and we just have Gilmore actually had a fine game, but behind Gilmore, we just don't have a whole lot, and so that's where we really just really miss Tyler. So, that was obviously disappointing today. Sorry, I'm looking at the stats from the game. Just seeing how sort of compare to the Minnesota game. Obviously, Crowell was 20 points, and Chucky was today's leading scorer with 22 points. As far as whether or not we need to worry, I think we need to see where this team is once Tyler's back. I think a lot of people have been saying this team's not really the 14th best team in the country. I don't really believe that. I think this team is at full strength, one of the best 15 teams in the country, best 14 teams in the country. I mean, we find a way to win games, right? And we're 3-1 in the Big Ten. Are you really? I mean, in the Big Ten, I'm just trying to think. Are you really going to say there's? You got to say two things. Either one, the Big Ten isn't that good, or that Wisconsin's not near the top of the Big Ten. And right now, I certainly think they're near the top of the Big Ten. I think the only team right now that has a solid argument to be ahead of Wisconsin is Purdue. And I think Wisconsin's capable of beating Purdue. And we'll see. But as far as just how players play today, Connor, I feel like we've got to get Connor Esigian more involved. I think he should be starting. I also don't think that we should ever have a lineup on the floor without Chucky or Connor. I think we, at the very least, need to have one of them out there. Whenever we have them both on the bench, the offense is so stale, especially when you don't have Tyler out there either. It's so stale. We just need a serious threat from three, and obviously Chucky and Connor can get you that threat. Connor obviously didn't have a great game today. He played 23 minutes, only came away with 5 points. Today was rough. 10-point loss. Obviously, whenever you play Big Ten on the road, it's tough. Today was no different. Hopefully, we'll get a bounce back, and yeah. I think that's all I'm going to say about basketball for now. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit more of an optimistic take uh, once we get further into the Big Ten season. Although I will quickly address, obviously, the Hunter Dickinson comments. As you know, Hunter basically said Wisconsin is a bunch of scumbags. I mean, like I said, the irony of this is just overwhelming. The fact that Juwan Howard is the one that hit Wisconsin's coach, and the fact that Michigan's had problems with other teams as well. And Greg Gard is just like as classy as they come. I think that's is a ridiculous comment. I'm pretty surprised Hunter said it. I don't know what he was trying to achieve. I'm glad that Michigan is coming to Wisconsin first. Right, they'll be in Madison February 14th, Valentine's Day. So I've got to think the Kohl Center is going to be absolutely rocking. Also, it looks like that could be an extremely important game in the Big Ten race. I think it's going to be close to the top. Michigan lost to Michigan State today as well. So Michigan, Wisconsin, both 3-1 currently in the Big Ten. But yeah, I just can't believe Hunter said the comments. Obviously, I'm going to be completely psyched for that game. It's probably the game I'm most excited for in the Big Ten. Well, other than it's close between that and Purdue. Both some exciting games. And yeah, so I guess Hunter did get one thing right. I think the feeling is mutual. I think a lot of Wisconsin fans just want to destroy Michigan, especially just after. I mean, tension is just so high between Michigan and Wisconsin after last year's game. Okay, let's go ahead and move on from basketball. Get the bad out of the way, and let's move on to the good. And the good is, of course, Wisconsin football. So Tanner Mordecai, for those of you that don't know, which I'll be shocked if you listen to this podcast and don't know, have not heard of the Tanner Mordecai news. But anyways, Tanner Mordecai is transferring to Wisconsin. He's going to be a sixth year. Spent 3 years at Oklahoma and 2 years at SMU, and is now going to be quarterback at Wisconsin. For one, or I should say, one, I think major point that most people would agree on, he's going to be the starter next year. So Nick Evers has 4 years of eligibility left. I think Nick is going to use next year as a year to develop, and will be the starter the year after. But Tanner Mordecai should absolutely be the starter. I mean, he was going to go to the NFL, and apparently there were some conversations that he wants to improve his draft stock, and he's coming to Wisconsin. So I think Phil Longo probably has to do with this, or is most impactful. Was obviously impactful in Tanner's decision, which is great. I mean, Wisconsin's quarterback room right now is probably the deepest ever, and I don't think it's unfair to say Wisconsin's building one of the deepest quarterback rooms in the country. I may get some backlash for that, but if you look at it, I mean, we are really building a very deep quarterback room. So we'll have Tanner. He's had 2 pretty impressive seasons at SMU. I think last year threw for about 3,500 yards and change, and which is actually pretty similar to what Russell Wilson did at his last year at NC State before he came to Wisconsin. So I think it's entirely possible for Tanner to have sort of a Russell Wilson-esque season next year. I know Russell's obviously the gold standard quarterback, and obviously his 2011 season was remarkable, and even I don't know if he's going to reach that level. I mean, hopefully he does. I think he absolutely can. Obviously, Wisconsin will be in a much different looking offense than what Russell had in 2011. But Tanner, I've got incredibly high hopes. Incredibly high hopes. I watched his tape. He's incredibly accurate. He's got a great arm. He is great at just finding the open receiver, right? Just finding the man, making his reads, and getting the ball out of his hand and downfield. So I- I'm excited. I'm just so unbelievably excited. I was excited for Nick Evers. Um, Nick Evers appears to be more of a dual threat quarterback than Tanner. I know Tanner does have some legs, and but I don't think that's really his mo. I think he's great at finding open receiver, get the ball downfield, and is really more of a passer than he is a runner. Nick, on the other hand, from what I understand, is absolutely a runner, is a huge threat. Obviously, this is from Nick in high school, so who knows how Nick will do in college. But anyways, one other point, I think there's been a lot of people saying, "Oh well, how does Nick Evers feel about Tanner coming to Wisconsin? Is he upset? I mean, he's transferring here. Was he expecting to start next year?" And I don't know if he was or not. He may have thought that he would certainly have an opportunity to start and compete, certainly based on uh, the rest of Wisconsin's roster. I wouldn't be surprised, and I probably also expect that Phil and Luke, when they told Nick, they talked about transferring. I'm guessing that if the conversation did come up about, oh, is Wisconsin going to get another transfer quarterback? I'm sure Phil and Luke said, yeah, we're probably going to look for a guy with a few years experience. I have no idea if that was said or not, but I guess I'm comfortable in saying there's no way that Phil or Luke promised Nick the starting spot next year when he committed. I don't think he committed because he thought he was going to be a 3 or 4 year starter here. I mean, he may very well be a 3 year starter here if he sticks around. Like I said, he's 4 years of eligibility left, and so he's got 3 left. Even if Tanner plays next year. So the other thing is Nick Evers, also an Oklahoma guy. From what I understand, Nick and Tanner have some sort of friendship, or I don't know how close of friends they are, but it does seem like they do know each other. That's what I've sort of heard, and uh, Nick has posted, I think, just some stuff on Instagram about Tanner coming. So I sort of feel comfortable that there's no hard feelings between Nick and Tanner, and I don't think uh, I think it's going to work out well. I think it's get Tanner in there, have him next year, following year, Nick Evers can start, and we can see where we are. But Tanner obviously gives us an opportunity to have a serious shot at the Big Ten title next year. And I'm not talking Big Ten West. I mean, Wisconsin has a serious shot at winning the Big Ten next year. And on that note, let's sort of talk about the press conferences held this week by Phil Longo and Mike Tressel. We'll start with Mike Tressel first. So the headline that came away from Mike Tressel's conference was that when Mike was asked what was the ceiling for this program, he responded by saying it was the national championship. And I know some of the other Wisconsin pundits out there sort of criticized this or called this into question and thought maybe he shouldn't have said that. But I completely disagree. I think it was the perfect answer. Wisconsin is, in order for Wisconsin to win a national championship, I don't want to just say they need to believe. That's a kind of corny and trite to say, oh, they need to believe they can win a national championship. But they really sort of do, right? They need to, like, the national championship shouldn't be some forbidden word. It's so odd that everyone wants to just talk about, oh, let's get this program to the next level. And we have this, like, a lot of pundits and the team and coaches, everyone talks about the next level. And, like, you'll never hear Wisconsin coaches talk about a national championship. And or they'll just say, even they'll just say championship, right? And I think the hesitation is Wisconsin hasn't won a national championship in football in the modern era, or some would say, depending on whether or not, depending how you look at it, Wisconsin has not claimed a national championship in football. And so I guess if I don't know. I think there might be some apprehension that if we say the goal is to win a national championship, then every season we don't reach our goals is sort of looked at as a failure and not and just not successful. So if the goal is to win a national championship at the program, then it doesn't mean other seasons are not, where you don't win a national championship are not necessarily a failure. But the thing is, look, people won a national championship. Wisconsin wants a national championship. Fans won a national championship. The team wants a national championship. As far as they've been in the, I mean, they've been at like near the top. If you just look at statistics for as far as like wins and streaks and everything over the last 20, 25 years, Wisconsin has been at the top of college football. And they're one of the few teams that are that high up on like various metrics that don't have a national championship. So Wisconsin's absolutely capable of national championship. I'm glad that Mike Tressel just came out and said it and didn't beat around the bush and just say, "Oh, I'd like to take this program to the next level, like this and that." And that doesn't mean anything. Okay, we need to just accept the fact that you won a national championship, and anything short of a national championship is a disappointment, right? It is. Frankly, it is. So, yes, we'll be happy. I mean, will we be happy with Big Ten championships? Yes, we will. But we at least need to start to compete for national championship. And I think the expectation is once the 12-team playoff is here, Wisconsin needs to be in that 12-team playoff more often than not. I mean, like that's where I think the standard what the standard should be. I would say 2 out of every 3 out of every 4 years, Wisconsin should expect to make the 12-team playoff. That needs to be the goal: consistently making the 12-team playoff, and being in the mix for a Big Ten title every year. And they need to one of these years things need to come together, stars need to align, and Wisconsin needs to win it all. So I think just by coming out and saying that, and just telling the players, and just not being afraid to like say national championship like it's a dirty word. I think what Mike Tressel did is a sort of step in the right direction, and actually sort of reminded me of Jim Tressel. And I'm sure there's not many Jim Tressel fans that listen to this show, or I don't know how many of you even know who Jim Tressel is for our younger fans. But Jim Tressel was, of course, Ohio State's coach prior to Urban Meyer, and actually, technically, Luke Fickell was a coach at Ohio State, interim coach at Ohio State for 1 year prior to Urban Meyer. But prior to the Luke Fickell year, Jim Tressel was coach at Ohio State. Jim Tressel was basically got the job because John Cooper at Ohio State couldn't beat Michigan. So Jim Tressel's first year in Columbus, he had a pep rally, not unlike stuff that Luke Fickell's done at Wisconsin, sort of at the basketball game. But they had like this official pep rally. And at the pep rally, Jim Tressel essentially promised Ohio State fans that they would beat Michigan the following year. He made some statement along the lines of, and in 200 and some days, when we go to Ann Arbor, we're gonna win. It's something like it's something along those lines. Basically, essentially promised a win for Ohio State, and he got a ton of criticism. Well, I shouldn't say Michigan ate it up. Right, Michigan, like local radio prior to Michigan Ohio State, played that clip over and over again about Jim Tressel basically promising that they was going to beat Michigan. I mean, that was bulletin board material. So I guess one, maybe it just runs in the family, right? Mike Tressel and Jim Tressel sort of making outlandish promises. But the other is Mike Tressel's wasn't nearly as it wasn't bulletin board material, right? This was not bulletin board material for another team, right? Like Hunter Dickinson's comments, right? No team is going to put Mike Tressel's quote about Wisconsin's ceiling being a national championship up in a locker room. So no other teams are going to sort of feed on this and try to show us up. I mean, I don't know, maybe Minnesota. Who knows what PJ Fleck will do, but for the most part, no one is going to remember this quote. I think more importantly is just that the coaches truly believe that that is the standard, and it really should be. I mean, Luke Fickell and his staff took Cincinnati to the playoffs. Cincinnati has no advantages over Wisconsin when it comes to football. If Cincinnati go to the playoffs, Wisconsin go to the playoffs. I'll just, other than, I should just say, let me just clarify that. Cincinnati's only advantage is that they may have a softer schedule than Wisconsin, right? That may be the only advantage. But as far as recruiting advantages or facilities or anything like that, Wisconsin has every advantage over Cincinnati. And so if Cincinnati go to the playoffs, a 14 playoff, Wisconsin can go to a 14 playoff. And in other words, like I said, we only have 1 year left of 14 playoff, but Wisconsin can get the top 4. Wisconsin can compete for a national championship. So as far as Mike Tressel comments, I love they said it. I want recruits. I want him saying that to recruits. I want him going to recruits' homes and saying, look, if you come to Wisconsin, we're here to win national championships. We're going to compete for a national championship. And I'm glad this direction we're going. And like I said, I'm hoping that's being communicated to kids in high school, and I'm hoping that's being communicated to potential transfers. I mean, that Wisconsin's goal is to win a national championship, and that's what we're working towards. And I know that's sort of Max sort of said the same thing, right, during Luke Fickell's initial press conference, right? He referred to championships and sort of left it vague. Does that mean Big Ten championships, or does that mean national championships, right? It's sort of same thing. Like, everyone's afraid to say the word national championship, which I said, we need to stop being afraid of saying the word national championship. We need to say, like, there's no disadvantage, like I said, other than just saying accepting potential disappointment. There's nothing wrong with saying Wisconsin wants to win a national championship. So anyways, I fully support Mike Tressel's Mike Tressel's comments, and I'm glad he said that, and I'm glad that's the attitude of this coaching staff. Other interesting points from Mike Tressel's press conference. He talked about the 3-3-5, and he said that he doesn't really run. He said what he actually does isn't that much different than a 3-4, and he is going to sort of try to merge Wisconsin's 3-4 with his sort of 3-3-5. He did say he doesn't consider it a traditional 3-3-5 because it's not like a 3-3 stack. The linebackers are not going to line up directly behind the linebackers. So, so even at that point, he also just talks about like the marriage between sort of Wisconsin style and his style, and that I think a few years ago, 2 years ago, Wisconsin was number 1 in the country in rush defense, and Cincinnati was number 1 in the country in passing defense. So if we can combine those and get both of those in place, I mean, we'll be all set. One other thing about 3-3-5, it was interesting to watch TCU play Michigan, right? Because TCU runs a 3-3-5, and the big criticism to 3-3-5 is, of course, inability to control line of scrimmage and inability to stop the run, right? TCU, however, completely stopped Michigan's ground game. So that was incredible. I mean, TCU completely stuffed Michigan. Other than that first play of the game, I mean, TCU was in the back. It felt like they were in Michigan's backfield on every single handoff. So I'm excited for 3-3-5. I mean, I love Wisconsin's defense of the past. I mean, maybe not this year, but last couple of years, Wisconsin's defense has been great. But after listening to Tressel in his press conference, I'm interested to sort of see what he can do. One other sort of history piece that just adds to the weirdness of sort of letting these Ohio State guys or welcoming this former Ohio State guys. Like I said, Tressel and Fickle. I absolutely think of those guys as Ohio State guys. Sort of letting them into the Badger family is Tressel also talked about. I believe his first time in Madison, uh, or at least his first jump around, was that 2003 Wisconsin Ohio State game. That's the one where Ohio State was on 17. Ohio State had won the national championship in 2002. They beat Miami in the national championship. And we're on a 17-game win streak. Came to Madison, and it's the Lee Evans touchdown, right? Chris Gamble, Ohio State's star cornerback, bit and beat Ohio State. They snapped 17-game win streak. But Tressel talks about basically being in the in the press box during jump around, and said he was literally terrified, or he was actually frightened when the press box started to shake. But it was a crazy jump around. I actually remember to this day watching it on TV. It was actually at some Buckeye fans' house when I watched the game, and it was one of the all-time great Wisconsin games. So okay, let's talk about let's talk about Phil Longo's press conference. First off, Phil Longo just seems like a cool guy to be around. I mean, though he got me so pumped up. Just like the way he just talks, and the way he talks to reporters, he's just like seems like such a good football guy to be around. He's incredibly sort of motivating, but sort of without even trying. So it was, you can find it on YouTube. It was it's certainly worth a listen. A couple takeaways. I thought the most interesting part of it was Phil Longo sort of talking about his offensive philosophy. And so Phil Longo's offensive philosophy is, prior to the snap, you want to stretch the defense horizontally. And after the snap, you want to stretch the defense vertically. And then you want to get the ball into athletes' hands, and to sort of let athletes be athletes, right? So watch the athletes do what athletes do, and sort of that's why, and just sort of remind you why you recruited them in the first place. So it's so different than any strategy Wisconsin has had. I mean, it's completely different than, we're going to try to control the clock, right? We're going to try to establish the run, control the clock, and just play the time of possession game. So it was great. I mean, it was exciting that we're passed downfield. He made it sound low that this is not going to be a team that passes every single play. I mean, he made it sound like, look, we are going to we're going to continue to run the ball. We're not going to shy away from what Wisconsin does. Wisconsin's had obviously some of the best backs in the country come through here, and we're going to continue to do that. So we're continuing to recruit high-end backs, and we're just going to continue to run the ball. It'll just be out of, probably more likely than not, out of a 11 personnel, right? We'll have 3 wide receivers. The field will be spread, and it'll probably be a handoff out of shotgun. And I think that's going to be great, only just because the box won't be stacked. It'll be a little bit more disguised as well. Hopefully, pre-snap, it's not incredibly obvious if we're passing or running. So I thought that was one of the more exciting things Phil Longo talked about. But the other was talking about just wide receiver talent, and he thinks that we actually have talented wide receivers. He thinks we've got talent in the locker room, but he's also, I mean, which I'm glad to hear him say that. And we do have some talent. I mean, Chim, Skyler, we have some talent at wide receiver. I think we need to be a little bit deeper wide receiver. And on that note, we'll talk about CJ Williams, a very highly rated 4-star from USC, may be coming to Wisconsin. He was on campus yesterday. and it's just based on, I don't know, based on like Twitter and Instagram. It seems like there's a real chance that that he may come to Wisconsin, and that would be huge. I mean, if we have C.J. Williams and Tanner Mordecai, I mean that is so huge. I mean, this team is going to look so much different than they did last year. I mean, the transfer portal is just going to allow this team to immediately turn around. And they talked about, and I can't remember if it was it must have been, I can't remember if it was Phil or I can't remember which coordinator was talking about this, but they talk about they don't want to rely on the transfer portal. I think Mike Tressel was talking about this, how he doesn't want to rely on the transfer portal, and it truly is just going to be sort of a stopgap. Or just fill gaps, fill the needs. But he talked about the importance of culture and how it is important that culture is built. Basically, he said that it was Tressel. Tressel said they were going to build a culture at Wisconsin, and it's important that culture has continuity. And with transfer guys, every year, right? Since that there may not be as much continuity in that culture, and so you're not, with transfer, there's just more variability. Some years you're gonna have bad culture, and they want to avoid that. So obviously, this transfer season has been incredibly exciting. But I don't know if this is going to be a year in, a year out thing. I think generally it's going to be, right, recruit high school guys and just develop them, and just pick up transfers as needed. If that means we lose guys to the transfer portal or injury, or just guys aren't developing. But yeah, so I think this transfer portal, we'll see. It should, next year we may also get a few guys, but I think in a couple of years, the portal shouldn't be as exciting as it is this year. But anyways, yeah. So Phil Longo, really enjoyed his press conference. It sounds like he really does want to be at Wisconsin. Apparently, which I hadn't realized. Phil Longo had actually turned Luke Fickell down a few years ago. Luke Fickell actually offered Phil a job at Cincinnati as offensive coordinator a few years ago. Phil ended up going to Ole Miss, and obviously had some success there, but really liked Fickell, and basically they stayed in touch. And Phil basically said, if I ever have another opportunity to work with Luke Fickell, I will. It sounded like he didn't really say he regretted not working with him, but he sort of felt like he missed an opportunity to work with Fickell at Cincinnati, and he was going to pass that up again. So that's incredibly exciting. And Phil obviously is a reason a lot of these guys that are starting to come in. I mean, C.J. Williams isn't coming on campus, right? If Phil's not here, and Tanner Mordecai is not coming here if Phil's not here. I say that, I'm sure Luke would have got a different guy, but Phil Longo in his philosophy, is a big reason why Wisconsin is seeing some of the talent, skill players that we don't ever see, right? We never talk about. I guess transfers. We never talk about the caliber of transfers that are have already committed or are coming to the school in previous years. So the Phil Longo, Mike Tressel press conferences, both great. Obviously waiting on C.J. Williams to see if he is going to commit. That'll be incredibly exciting if he does. But other than that, keep an eye on the transfer portal, and yeah, and we'll try to get a reaction show to hopefully sometime in the next week after a game. But other than that, until next time, on Wisconsin.